Uh, it's got my girls in my head. Don't blow it, Dad. Okay, so it's a treat to be here. And I really want to begin, first of all, saying there have just been some remarkable testimony by all these women from these different countries. But I want to pick up with what Ruslana was saying about Ukraine. You've both had to negotiate with Vladimir Putin, who does not strike me as the most people-friendly guy, let alone woman-friendly guy. What did you learn from that experience? What should we know about him as a person? And how are we doing in managing this crisis? Madam Secretary, would you begin?
Well, Tom, first, it's great to see you, and I'm thrilled to be back here at this wonderful conference. And I thank Tina and everybody who's put it together, and I'm especially pleased to be here with Christine Lagarde, who has just shown such great leadership, Ukraine being one example, but there are so many more through the International Monetary Fund. You know, we could be here till breakfast talking about what's going on with Russia, and in particular, what's going on with Vladimir Putin. So I'll try to be brief and just make a few points. Vladimir Putin, in my view, is motivated by the past. He wants to recreate it. He wants to reclaim it. He wants to restore what he views as the proper place of Russia in the world order. He is motivated by his looking back on history, going back to the czars. He has publicly said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was a great catastrophe. He believes that politics is a zero-sum game, which means that Russia can't do well with all of the great resources and assets Russia has, starting with its people, if other people are doing well, and therefore he wants to do what he can to elevate the Russian position, particularly in its neighborhood, among those countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union and or part of the Warsaw Pact. So what he seems now to be doing is looking for ways to score points at home, to build up his political base, relying on nationalism and the appeal to greater Russia, to avoid the kind of protests and demonstrations that were beginning to raise questions about his legitimacy, about the direction he was taking his country. So one of the surest ways of diverting attention is, you know, cause a ruckus somewhere else. He wants to stop the further Europeanization of those parts of Europe, particularly South and East, and he wants to try to create a competitor to the European Union, which he calls the Eurasian Unit, with countries like Belarus or Kazakhstan. And then, of course, there's the very personal feeling that Crimea was given away. Mm-hmm. So he has set about to redraw the boundaries of post-World War II Europe, something that we all thought were settled. Now, I really believe that over the long run, this is a losing strategy. But I think that the United States and our European allies, we have to be both strong and patient. We have to help to restore the opportunity of the Baltic nations, other Eastern European nations to feel free from intimidation, and that is largely a question of both energy supplies and preventing the subversion of their democracies by influence peddling, if you will, starting from Moscow. And I think that this is a time for the West, led by the United States and international organizations like the IMF, to be very clear that the takeover of Crimea was illegal, illegitimate. The United Nations General Assembly has just overwhelmingly condemned it. That we need to be putting together both financial and technical assistance for Ukraine so that they can emerge from this crisis stronger and unified. And we have to play a long game ourselves. And part of our problem is we are a raucous democracy, as are our friends in Europe, and we're all still trying to get our budgetary houses in order. We're trying to set our own priorities for our own people. But we, like previous generations of leaders and citizens, have to say to ourselves, it's really important that we say no to somebody like Vladimir Putin, and that we do it in a smart way that makes him think twice about what he's trying to achieve.
Thank you. Madam Lagarde, you know, it's interesting, maybe the two most important people that Putin has to wrestle with right now on the international stage are women. Yourself and Angela Merkel, who will actually determine, you know, more about how this story ends and whether it ends well. Bring us up to date on your negotiations with Ukraine, because obviously you're central now to providing the economic support they need to sustain them through this crisis.
Thank you very much, Tom, and I'm also delighted to be with the two of you and with you, Hillary, very much so. On Ukraine, we have been on the ground as soon as the new authorities of Ukraine called us. We started with fact-finding because we needed to know what was in the books, how much reserves there was in the central bank, and
How bad was it?
It was bad. And what's more complicated with Ukraine is that you have all the normal authorities that you can think of, but then there are some, you know, other parallel entities like Naftogaz and a few others, which are operating legitimately, but have also some funny, you know, second set of books. So we did that. And we immediately converted, as soon as it was possible, and when the authorities asked us, into a negotiation mode. And I'm so proud of the team that was on the ground, because there was a group of men and women, I hasten to add, who stayed there, stationed in Kiev, and working, you know, some 18, 19 hours a day, day after day after day after day. They concluded the negotiation, and we will be submitting to the board of the IMF, which includes, obviously, all member states, including Russia, a program under which we will lend to Ukraine anywhere between $14 and $18 billion, probably. And more importantly, because money is one thing, and there is a need for money, not just the IMF, but many others as well, we will expect the Ukrainian authorities and the Ukrainian people to take their destiny, to take their economy into their hands, and to deal with it in a transparent, honest, governed by the rule of law manner, so that they can go in the direction that the people have indicated was their future. And to do that, there will be lots of things. I won't bore you with the budget that needs to be voted, sure, with the truth on the price of energy that will have to come about, the right exchange rate where the currency has to be. All of those things have to happen over time. It doesn't have to happen just overnight, but it needs to happen, and it needs to be implemented, checked, controlled in the name of the people.
A quick follow-up. Are we, the United States, doing our share? To support the IMF in this mission? Tell the truth.
All right. You're asking the truth? No. No.
Yeah. What aren't we doing? Because I think everyone here who doesn't know the inside of this story would be interested to know what aren't we doing.
Okay. The IMF is in three businesses. Surveillance, we go under the skin of the economy of our members to see whether the numbers are right and how the economies are doing. We lend money to countries in difficulty, and we've done that over the last 70 years around the world. Starting in Ukraine after the Second World War, went to Latin America, to Asia, back to Ukraine, to all Central and Eastern Europe at the time when the Iron Curtain fell. And we do that, that's our business, and we do technical assistance and capacity building. Now, to go strong, because we need to do that with some countries, including in particular Ukraine, we need to have a very solid capital base. Mm-hmm. We cannot live on sort of renewable loans. You cannot be a firefighter and have a little tap that opens, you know, over time. Yeah. You need to have the big hose, yeah, right? Yeah. Well, that's what we need. And pretty much the entire membership of the IMF has ratified the reform that was agreed to and actually supported actively by the United States back in 2010. And now, unfortunately, the Congress has not taken the opportunity to finally ratify this reform. And because the United States has a veto right in the institution, because it's a leading member, it was a founding partner, it can block everything. So I'm the firefighter and I've got this tap, which works. You know, it's a pipe, but it's not a big hose as I need it.
Gotcha. Secretary Clinton, 19 years ago, you went to Beijing and participated in the first UN Women's Summit there. And one of the things you said there was, never again will we separate women's rights from human rights. How are we doing? Give us your report card.
Well, you know, Tom, we came out of Beijing with a platform for action that was agreed to by the 189 countries that sent official delegations. And that platform for action called for the full participation of women in their economies, in their political systems, with access to health care and education, to be fully functioning, equal citizens. And I think we have certainly made progress. There is absolutely no doubt about that. I'm working through the Clinton Foundation on a project called No Ceilings to try to really assess what we've achieved, where the gaps are, and also what the agenda for the future should be, because 19 years ago we didn't really imagine the digital technological world in which we find ourselves today.